Well, this video is a hard one for me to do. And I think I'm doing it more for me, but I want to share my experience too. I think it helps to release, and as we share our experiences, it helps other people. I was very triggered with Jess's last teacher training video where she talked about her daughter, her oldest daughter, and her ex-husband and the sexual abuse around that. And my oldest daughter was sexually abused by her dad, and I thought I had pretty much worked through all of that. But I'm realizing, no, I haven't, because it triggered me really, really bad. Made me, brought up a lot of grief and anger, a lot of anger and grief about it, and a lot of guilt and shame, mostly anger. The story with my daughter is I didn't know about the abuse until she was, I believe she was 19. She was an adult at that time. I believe she was 19, and she tried to commit suicide, and she ended up in our psychiatric hospital in Alaska, in Anchorage. And she was there for 2 months, and that's when it all came out. And I was shocked. I was really shocked. And it probably took me a good 4 days when I was told about this. And she wasn't the one that initially told me, someone else did. It took me, and her dad and I had been divorced for years. So, I had no, I don't know. It wasn't that I didn't believe her, because I did believe her. I know she was telling the truth, but it still took me 4 to 5 days to process that and fully accept that he was capable of doing that. And I remember when I did. I remember the moment, because I kept going back and forth. Maybe she's mistaken. Maybe, maybe this, maybe that. Because I couldn't believe that this man, he was an asshole in a lot of ways. But I never would have believed he was capable of doing something like this. And I remember the moment I fully accepted it. And that saying, I was so mad I saw red, that's not just a saying, it's true. My vision went completely red. The entire room went totally red on me. And I cannot say what I wanted to do to him on a video, so I won't say what and it's a good thing that at one time he lived like 10 miles down the road from us. And at that time, when I found out about all this, he was in Nome. I was 50 miles north of Anchorage. So let's just say it was a good thing I wasn't able to get in my car and just drive 10 miles, okay? And the only thing that she was able to really tell me, because she doesn't want to talk to me about this, and I've honored that with her. She had professionals helping her, so I let them do that. And she didn't want to talk to me. I had such shame and guilt. And what she told me is that there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. And also that she doesn't remember when it started. She was so young, she has no memory of it when it first began. And unfortunately at the time, she's almost 40 now. So this is over 20 years ago that it all came out, when she was 19. And at that time in the state of Alaska, if she had still been a minor, if it had come out when she was 17, they could have prosecuted. But because she was an adult, there was statute of limitations had run out because she was an adult. So we had no legal recourse whatsoever. And quite honestly, at that point in her life, I don't think she could have testified against him. I don't think she could have done it. I researched here just a few days ago after this video with Jess. The laws have changed in the state of Alaska. There is no statute of limitations on sexual abuse. At 40 years old, she could go in and file a claim against him in a court of law. And oh, guess what? There's medical records to back her up. And it wasn't that the psychiatrist didn't believe her, because the doctors did believe her at the hospital. They believed her. There just was they had no legal recourse for her. But we do now, if she was to choose that. But at that time, I had so much guilt and shame, just really bad. You know, I was one of those stupid mothers that didn't know what was going on in her home. And the thing of it is, I was sexually molested when I was 9 years old for several years by a school teacher. So I knew it could happen. And I was going to be goddamn to hell that it happened to my daughter. But I was always looking outside the home. And I still think, I don't know how this man could do that to his own daughter. So I have a lot of anger. And I do know we create our own realities, and I know that we are in soul contracts with all of this. So I'm working very hard on taking responsibility, my responsibility. But you know, sometimes you got to work through the anger, the grief, the anger. Yeah, and I thought I'd done all this, and Jess talks about coming around full circle back to the scene of the crime. Boy, you talk about a crime. I'm at the fucking crime scene right now with all of this. And part of it too with with this, and I also, because of my experience, but I know that I understand the whole thing. But from the time she was 2 years old, I talked about good and bad touching. From the time she was 2 years old, good and bad touching. And I would ask her periodically, you know, about the good and bad touching and everything. And I included her dad in that too. But she wouldn't speak up. She wouldn't. And I understand that. I never spoke up on my abuser either. And what they do is called grooming. They're groomers. They groom their victims, and it's very subtle and it's very slow. I was 9 years old, so I was much older than her, probably when it started with her. And I still didn't speak up. But what they do is they're so subtle, and they do it so slowly, very seductively, very lovingly, if you can believe that. They do. And by the time I realized the line had been crossed, it had been way crossed by the time I realized, this isn't right. And I felt I was just as much to blame as he was. As a 9-year-old, I felt like I was just as guilty as he was. And if I was to speak up, well, I would get in trouble too. So there's no threats, there's no violence, and my ex was not ever threatening or violent with her. But what's coming up now with me, well, with Jess, I'm really grateful and really proud of them that they are testifying in the current trial with Jess's daughter's father. He was convicted with her daughter, but I don't know if he even served any time. No time to speak of. Now they have an opportunity to really put him away and to protect a current victim. And that's really empowering, and I'm really glad to see that. But I'm dealing with anger with where's my daughter's, um, where's her justice? Boy, the system fucked up with them. You know, way back then, boy, the system wasn't there for the victims then, and I know it's not a lot. It's better now. It needs to get better, but I can tell you it's a whole lot better than it was over 20 years ago. But I have a lot of anger that my daughter has not had justice. And what's even worse is when this all came down, she was 19, this all came down, we had been divorced for years. I was wife number 2. He was with wife number 3. They were, I don't know if they were married at that time, but they were living together when this all happened. And oh, guess what? Wife number 3 is raising her 5-year-old granddaughter. Yeah. So I call wife number 3, and I tell her the whole story of what's coming down with, what's coming out with Jennifer, with my daughter, and what happened. I told her. She chose to stay with him. And I know how he is. He's very manipulative. He's very cunning. Oh, he's very smart. He's very deceptive. And I'm just the ex-wife, even though I'm the one that divorced him. But it's still, see, I'm just the ex-wife. And he probably blew it off with our daughters, that our daughter was having a mental breakdown and she didn't know what she's talking about. So I tried. I did speak up. And it didn't do any good. And then many years later, oh, he has an affair on wife number 3, which is kind of interesting because the granddaughter had now grown up and was out on her own. But he has an affair with a 20-year-old that has 2 little kids. And he leaves wife number 3 to marry, he's on wife number 4 now. And she's got 2 little kids. She's in her 20s. And he has his vasectomy reversed. And they have a child together. And a little girl. And I think she's probably about 2 years old now. He's living a pedophile's dream. He's living in a house full of little kids. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do with all this? I tried speaking up with wife number 3. That didn't do any good. Speaking up with wife number 4, I don't think is going to do any good at all. And what am I supposed to do with all this? And I know I'm supposed to take full responsibility and understand that this is soul contracts. And I'm working on accepting it and letting it go. Well, I've got to obviously need to process some of this before I can let it go. And there's a lot of power in letting go. But something I have done, a couple things I've done. I initially did tantrum energy in the mirror months and months ago. And I thought that really cleared things out. But what I realized here in the last few days, I haven't really ended root programs that I'm running in my reality. And in my reality, pedophiles don't get caught. Pedophiles get away with abusing children. Because that's what my experience was growing up. My abuser never paid for anything. Jennifer never got justice. My ex never had to pay for what he did to our daughter. The law didn't even back her up. Even if she had wanted to pursue, the law wouldn't have backed her up. She couldn't even have him charged. The hospital couldn't bring forward a lawsuit against him on her behalf. Oh, but now they can. If he was to be caught, there's medical records, there's documentation, And that would be allowed into court now. But what I had to do was use my root journal to ending programs. I've been running programs around that pedophiles are never caught. Pedophiles never serve time. Pedophiles get away with abusing children. I've been running these programs, and I have ended these programs, changing them. And it's empowering to see what Jess is doing with her daughters, testifying against this ex-husband, and the girls' father, who is now on trial for sexually abusing another little girl. So it's empowering to see that they're getting justice. Oh, my daughter deserves justice. The kids that he's living with need to be protected. So I've done that with the programs, ending these programs. And what that does, and also I've done ego letters. I wrote, and you can write love you letters from the inner child, which I've done to my oldest daughter. I've done a number of those love you letters to her. But I have anger. I'm just kind of angry at everybody, including myself. But I've written ego letter, and I've written the ego letters to myself. But I've written ego letters to my daughter, to her dad, and the current wife right now, and just letting it all out. Because I have spoken up in the past. I tried to change things in the outside reality. Didn't work. So what I'm doing now is, and I've had really good experience with changing results, really good results with changing my outside reality by changing my inside reality, by doing ending programs and writing ego letters. And I say in my ego letters what I want to say to everybody out there. I mean, I let it rip. Oh, I just let it fucking rip. I don't hold anything back. I really let it go. And it's stronger, it's energetic. And I don't mail these letters. I don't try to change it in the physical reality. I'm changing it inside. I'm changing it energetically. And it's much more powerful. If you're dealing with a situation with an out-of-control teenager or a spouse or an asshole boss or whatever, I have found it's much more effective and much more powerful to do it through ending programs and writing these ego letters. Don't mail them. Write these ego letters, and it just releases it all out. And it also puts you in more of a neutral energetic state. I'm not quite there yet, but a lot of times it takes a little while for this to work its way out. And it might take a little bit, but I feel things shifting. Jennifer, my daughter, has, in the past, she's a very forgiving person, and she's kind of made excuses for him even, because one of the reasons I divorced him is his drinking got way out of control, and she blamed it on the alcohol, which we all know if alcohol created pedophiles at one time or another, we all would have been pedophiles. So I think that was just her way of dealing with it. And I allowed that. And it did upset me that she wanted to continue to have a relationship with her dad when she got older. But I allowed that. My relationship with her is more important to me than everything else, you know. It just is. But what I'm doing, because I feel like, what am I supposed to do with this information? I've thought about calling, making an anonymous phone call to report activity in that household with those kids, but they go in and they don't find anything. It's dismissed. And I'm aware that that's happened with other families, and then it came out later, oh, the girl was telling the truth. But it was, the law goes in and they do an investigation, but they can't prove it. It's dismissed, it's thrown out. So I'm not trying to do anything in the physical reality. I'm doing it all within, doing it all inside, ending programs, writing ego letters. And I can feel things shifting with my daughter. I can already feel it shifting. And I've noticed over the last few months, she's said some things about her dad that has indicated to me things aren't all that great between them. And this may be coming up in her. All this is coming up in her because he's living in a house full of little kids now. And the last part, big part of changing, making energetic changes is letting go. Being okay with the outcome either way. Being okay whether he's ever caught and prosecuted and put away. Being okay whether he is or he isn't. Well, obviously I'm not there yet, but I'm working through that. And I'm actively working through it. And I can make a mental decision. I've talked about that before. I can make a mental decision to let go, but it has to be an emotional one. I've done it enough times now to realize I can say, oh, I just let it go. No, you've got to emotionally let it go too. And I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. I'm working on it. But I would like to, I visualize and imagine that he is caught and he is stopped. And I've ended programs that I believed that they never are. Pedophiles never are caught and incarcerated. I've ended that program. Pedophiles are incarcerated. Pedophiles are stopped. So, anyway, it's been kind of a rough few days for me here. Yeah. Returning to the scene of the crime. Yeah, it's a crime, all right. And it's taken me, and this is 20 years, this is over 20 years ago. I've let go of most of the shame and guilt, but it's still there. I'm the one that's supposed to protect her, and I didn't. So I'm still releasing some of that too. I just wanted to share that.